Great. So good afternoon. My name is Tammy Waller, and I am the Director for K-12 Social Studies and World and Native Languages at the Arizona Department of Education. And I'm really excited to be spending the afternoon with you. And I'll turn it over to fellow judges to introduce themselves.
Good afternoon. My name is Lynn Simons, and I'm a district court judge in Nevada. I'm thrilled to be here at Nationals. I'm going to ask all of you to take a very deep breath right now.
Good afternoon. My name is Murray Snow, and I'm the Chief Judge for the Federal Court in Arizona.
And we're ready to hear who you are.
Excited to be here, and nice to meet you all today. We're Irvington High School's Unit 6 team. My name is Surya Teja Mandadi.
My name is Andrew Chang.
And I'm Vignesh Senthil Kumar. We'd like to thank our judges, our coach, Mr. Martinez, and the timekeeper.
Thank you. So Unit 6, what challenges might face American constitutional democracy in the 21st century? Question number 1. Thomas Hobbes noted that life in a state of nature is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. How has the human condition changed over time? And how is that change reflected in our expectations of government? Should the principles of natural rights or classical republicanism guide policy changes designed to improve the condition of all people? What are the most pressing domestic and global challenges facing Americans today and in the future? What policies can you suggest to address them?
In contrast to Thomas Hobbes, John Locke claims that humans have natural rights to life, liberty, and property. America was built on the foundation of protecting these rights, and as the human condition continues to change, we've seen a greater emphasis on political, social, and economic rights. At the start of our nation, the framers created a republican form of government, inspired by philosophers like Locke, essentially transitioning away from the monarchical status quo seen across the world. The right to vote expanded through the 15th, 19th, and 26th Amendments, and was further protected through the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
Within this democratic society, the human condition has begun to address social equality and expand natural rights to marginalized groups. Following the Civil War, the 13th and 14th Amendments abolished slavery and expanded certain rights for the newly freed African Americans, and the 1964 Civil Rights Act further advanced the rights of minorities. Similarly, women and LGBTQ minorities will make immense strides for equal rights in matters of employment and marriage.
Furthermore, technology has drastically advanced the human condition. From the expansion of railroads integrating 19th century society to rapid globalization due to 21st century information technology, innovation has improved but also complexified our economic system, leading to a larger emphasis on economic equality in our government. For example, following the Great Depression, FDR's New Deal created various federal programs to focus on the recovery for the American people, shifting economic policy towards a Keynesian model with increased government spending.
In line with the preamble of the Constitution, which calls for the promotion of the general welfare, classical republicanism should guide policy changes for the betterment of all. Aristotle indicates that the common good distinguishes morally sound constitutions from corruption, and that such a society creates immense unity and cooperation.
In a state of nature, where one will have the most natural rights, Locke highlights the constant state of war between free individuals in the absence of any political authority. Therefore, classical republicanism would ensure the necessary security and authority for a civil society.
The benefits of following classical republicanism is most prominently seen through the COVID-19 pandemic. In several places, mask mandates and lockdowns have limited the rights of individuals to protect their public health. Furthermore, the CARES Act, which provided benefits for both workers and businesses, saved 12 million people from poverty. Additionally, the recently proposed infrastructure plan by the Biden administration would promote economic development with investments in transportation and expanded safety nets for working class Americans.
Along with COVID-19, there are numerous domestic and global challenges facing Americans today. Economic inequality has become an alarming issue, especially with the rise in automation. Since 2001, only upper income earners have experienced gains in median net worth, with the top 5% owning 2/3 of total wealth.
In terms of automation, 10% of jobs are at risk of replacement, and blue-collar, manual workers are impacted most. In fact, there is now an additional 8.4 million jobs at risk, a 23% increase due to COVID-19. There needs to be new economic policies centered around advancing the common good, like universal basic income and education for workers to transition into new fields.
Globally, authoritarian powers are trying to challenge American influence. Russia has interfered in the 2016 US elections to spread disinformation online and has also hacked American corporations. Additionally, China seeks to enhance its influence in Asia and Africa through Belt and Road Initiative loans. The US should increase its cybersecurity presence and prioritize diplomatic negotiations to reaffirm an international role and advance the human condition. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we're going to ask some follow-up questions. And I'm going to go ahead and start with a follow-up question, and then we'll have the other judges ask a few also. So my follow-up question has to do with something that you were talking about when you were talking about solving some of these problems. My question has to do with what tensions do you believe may arise or be arising when we're addressing these problems between those who look for a more natural rights solution versus those who look for more of a classical Republican or common good solution?
Definitely. So in Federalist 10, James Madison talks about how there's latent causes of faction within society. And because of different self-interests between different groups, we see the result of factions, which further deters us away from the common good. So as we have different groups, some groups that may want to prioritize the common good and may want more involvement of government in their lives, while we see other groups who want more natural rights and more government free from their lives. And this causes tension between these two factions, which creates a lot of the political polarization that we've seen in society today. And ultimately, these factions deter us away from the common good, as Madison stated in Federalist 10.
For example, in the COVID-19 pandemic, the Pew Research Center conducted a poll in 2020 showing that most Democrats, 95%, support having a mask mandate. But in Republican conducted states, only around 45% support mask mandates. So there's a struggle between whether the nation should follow along more classical republicanism approach to the COVID-19 pandemic or more of a natural rights approach.
That's why I believe there must be more fundamental changes made to our American constitutional democracy. For example, in the Senate, the filibuster has enabled gridlock in the Senate, which has sort of prevented many of these policies to be enacted, as it forces 10 of the other party members to sign on to any legislation. Additionally, according to scholar Haley Stilwell, he suggests that we lower the bar for amendments from 3/4 to 2/3, which would still make sure you still need a supermajority, but also make sure that it is more possible for amendments to be passed. As according to former Justice Anthony Scalia, he calculated that 2% of the population can withhold an amendment from being passed, thus showing how the current amendment system must be reformed in order for us to better make changes to our democracy.
Thank you. Oops,
I'm
sorry.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
To what extent can or should the United States facilitate and even subsidize the administration of the COVID vaccinations worldwide without creating the perception that it is not serving American interests first?
Well, I believe what we should prioritize making sure that we help other nations with their vaccine development, as this pandemic is a global issue, and by the COVID-19 pandemic getting worse in other countries like India, with the recent surge in cases there, we see other new variants and strands of the virus mutating, which can hurt American interest domestically, as those strains may not be as susceptible to the vaccine. Thus, it is in Americans' best interest to supply the vaccine to neighboring countries, obviously prioritizing our domestic citizens first.
However, making it seem as if we're giving vaccines to other countries in need needs to play well with the American public, because we have to make sure the American public knows that by distributing vaccines to other nations, that it is helping American interests as well. Because other countries, our adversaries like China and Russia, are engaging in vaccine diplomacy, and it is important for the United States to catch up along with its allies and partners. For example, President Biden met with Quad leaders last week, and he voted to distribute 1 million vaccines throughout the Quad nations in order to promote a free and democratic Indo-Pacific region.
So during the COVID-19 pandemic, as you know, there at one point we did not have affiliation with the World Health Organization, and it seemed to be party driven. What world and global entities or organizations do you believe that the United States should be a member of and not withdraw from?
Due to Trump's America First policy, we saw a lot of pulling out from a lot of international partnerships, such as the United Nations, the Human Rights Council. And because of this, we've seen countries like China take the advance in diplomacy, gaining over 4 important leadership spots within the UN in areas like the Food and Agriculture Organization. And I think one particular organization we should be extremely keen on is the World Trade Organization, as this will influence how data privacy measures work for the next 10 years, and how a lot of the 5G will be implemented on a large scale. So by involving ourselves in the WTO, we can ensure that data privacy measures and other policies related to 5G serve American interests and don't fall into hands of other nations like China.
However, it is important to note the argument made by the other side that the United States does provide disproportionately more resources and money and troops to these international organizations like NATO. However, I would argue that is a necessary benefit, as according to the independent think tank Council on Foreign Relations, they suggest that by America disproportionately providing these tools and resources, it is able for America to dictate foreign policy and be able to make sure that they prioritize American economic interests at start, which through organizations like the WTO, as my colleague mentioned.
So my next question is following up on something that you had mentioned, which was the idea of polarization. So as we work to solve these different challenges today, how can we bring together these polarized groups for the common good?
I think it ultimately starts at the local level. Alexis de Tocqueville talked about the enlightened self-interest, and when he examined New England townships and how people were able to involve themselves in voluntary associations within their own community. So by focusing on local level politics, which aren't as partisan driven, people will have a more vested interest within their community and vested interest within the political process for the greater good. And also involving ourselves in local politics allows for affecting issues such as police brutality or defunding the police or measures toward that, or even education. So I believe by involving ourselves on the local level, we can sort of draw away from the political partisanship we see across our nation.
I believe that we can also start at a federal level from the top down. So one issue that unites the United States in a deeply bipartisan era, deeply polarized era, is the United States strategic competition with China. And that requires a whole level government approach where Congress has been uniquely united in a bipartisan approach towards competition with China in the 21st century. And according to a Pew Research poll, over 80% of Americans support a tougher line on China. So
Andrew, you're at time.
Yeah, so by supporting these policies, we can focus on the issues that unite Americans first, and then expand to other issues.
Thank you.
Awesome job.
Must feel good to take that deep breath now and know that you guys went first and everything. Do we give feedback or do we?
I believe that we do give brief
Yes, please.
feedback.
Yes, please.
Okay. I'll start. You guys have such a wealth of knowledge about this question. And what I really like, and I hope you continue to do, is you really have a conversation with us. It's like we're sitting together, having a cup of coffee, and you're talking to me about this issue very personally. It seems like it doesn't seem like you're giving a speech or something that you've researched. You're sharing your ideas, and I really appreciate that constitutional conversation tone that you take. I just might add sometimes just to slow down a little bit in the opening statement, and then pick up your speed a little bit as you go on, because it takes us a while as judges sometimes to catch up. But I just commend you for your preparation and your knowledge of these issues and events, and how you weave together the philosophy, the history, the current issue. And it was a really great round for me to watch. Thank you.
I agree with Ms. Waller. I thought that I could have sat here all day listening to you. I was so excited for my next question. And what I perceived is nothing threw a curveball at you. You know, every question you picked up, you brought current events, you wove in so many different aspects, including even, you know, talking about 5G. I mean, when you really look at this Thomas Hobbes question, how did you get all the way to technology? And I mean, for me, it was so robust with citations, with common sense. I really, in even trying to provide some constructive criticism, the only thing that I would suggest, which is so minor, is that at one point, one of you said, "I believe." And I think it's important to remember you're testifying before Congress. You are experts. And so, you know, you have your position. It would be what your group takes, or you differ from your colleague. And there was one where you differed from your colleague, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was fantastic.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was the other side of it addressed at least you were really good about pointing out some other sides of the question. You know, you can always push it a little further if you had more time. I'm sure you would. Does the mask mandate and the difference between Republican and Democratic states reflect a difference in individual rights, or does it reflect a belief about science? Some of those questions could be really fascinating to explore. You did mention them though, and I thought that was pretty darn perceptive. I personally appreciated the reference to Tocqueville. It's not only,
Yes.
but it is one of the ways that Tocqueville thought you sort of bridge this tension between Hobbes and between Locke. And in fact, most political theorists still think that that is a principal way to bridge the tension. So I was glad to hear that reference. Very nice job.
Thank you for all the feedback.
Thank you for the feedback.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So with that, we conclude this part of our hearing.
Thank you all for your time today. We appreciate it.